CTV family.
Welcome back to EKSE, ladies and gentlemen. Sisahleli no Jerome, who is an associate producer and filmmaker Ase Research Film Project. We are talking about involvement when it comes to human and civil rights. And he's a global trapper. He goes here and there trying to make this world a better place. And before we went to an ad break, I wanted to find out from Jerome, how does he think we can each make a contribution towards human rights on a global scale? Jerome, over to you.
Thank you a great deal, my brother. I think that when we take the word Ubuntu seriously, this Ngini word that means I am because we are, that my humanity is wrapped up in your humanity, I think the mandate is clear as to what all of us can do to help advance human and civil rights. And that is simply this, that is to value the divine imprint on every human being. That is to love every human being with all their conditions and irrespective of who they are. That we must embody this value, a revolution of values, where people are not valued based on their market craft or what they can offer or what they can produce, but simply because they are human beings in the family of humanity. And so when we are able to express that radical love, when we embody that radical love of Ubuntu, then we fight for our brothers and sisters who are killed in the streets by protesting. When we embody that radical love, we advance regulatory reform and legislative reform so that we no longer criminalize Blackness. When we embody this idea that I am because we are, we fight for the freedom of each other. And so it's something that seems simple to love each other. We have to practice love and at least be less mean to each other, because we live in a world with some misleading mouthpieces and dangerous plutocrats who have eroded all sense of moral leadership. But the people, everyday people, can reclaim that mantle, even if our leaders refuse to. So love each other. That's what you can.
You have traveled because of your work to interesting places like Japan. Why did you go there, and how did you find the experience and the people going to the foreign land of Japan?
Thank you. I traveled to Japan, wow, that was 9 years ago, in 2010, and it was with a organization called the Birmingham Sister Cities organization, of which I am proud to serve on the board of directors currently. And it was an exchange program for young students to really engage in another person's culture, to understand how brothers and sisters think across the Pacific Pond, and really to make the world smaller. But it really propelled me into a life of traveling, of building a routine of travel, because I realized the same thing that Mark Twain realized, and that is that travel is fatal to prejudice, and all of us will benefit greatly from it. We need to travel the world and become acquainted with our neighbors. Martin Luther King Jr. said we're already geographically one, and now it is time for us to be spiritually one. We heard him say injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He was revealing to us what my dean at Morehouse College, Dr. Lawrence Edward Carter, would say is a cosmopolitan perspective, that everybody is affected by everyone's decisions. All of life is interrelated, interdependent, and interpenetrating. And so it's very important for us in America to be concerned not only with our own neighbors and with our own roofs, but to think about other folks around our world, because we have inherited a great house, a world house. So we have to start thinking like global citizens.
Speaking of things that are important, why is it important for us to be conscious about crimes committed against humanity?
We have to see that the original sin of white supremacy is not confined by borders or geography. That in a real sense, the issues of racism and discrimination and political malfeasance and economic degradation and exploitation in America is very much connected to a global economy that exploits non-white, low-wage, itinerant workers across this world. That we're all essentially dealing with the same triplet evils identified by Dr. King. That is racism, that is a love for war, and exploitative capitalism. And so we can't simply try to eradicate these issues in the United States while it continues to fester in Brazil, in Ghana, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Japan, in Germany, because it will only recreate itself. But we must engage in structural change the world over. And that only comes by building allies and communities with brothers and sisters across the globe. And this was expressed by our ancestors, whether it was William Monroe Trotter, who was an activist in the early 20th century, who traveled to Paris to engage in race conferences to talk about the problem of race in the country, to Paul Robeson, to Malcolm X, who traveled to Africa and to the UK to engage other cultures, to Martin Luther King, who engaged Kwame Nkrumah, and Nelson Mandela. We must continue to be internationalists in our scope, and that's only the way we'll become free as a people.
Jerome is an associate producer and filmmaker at Ase Research Film Project and a staff director. Right now it's time for us to check what's the latest when it comes to the World Health Organization and the COVID-19. And when we return, we'll continue with a conversation with Jerome. Keep it locked right here on EKSE. Now that was the latest when it comes to COVID-19 and the information we acquired from the World Health Organization. For more information, you can dial 0800 029 999, or you can invite them via WhatsApp or 0600 123 456. And remember, you need to maintain social distance and abide by regulations, the lockdowns in South Africa, so that you ensure that you are not infected by a virus. You need to be cautious about this so that you do not get infected, as well infect the people that you love. COVID-19 has taken the world by surprise, and we do not know when it's going to end, but we know that as humanity, we have the responsibility to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe. Now, Jerome, welcome back to the show. I want to find out from you, what do you think we can learn about COVID-19 and humanity?
Thank you so much. We must realize that COVID-19 is not only a pandemic, but in a real sense, it is a parable. It teaches us three things. One, that we are inextricably connected. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that we are all tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. I cannot be what I ought to be unless you are who you ought to be. That we've seen a virus translate from what we believe Wuhan, Texas, in a wet market, all the way to my city, my current city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. We've seen that you cannot put borders on what affects humanity. And so it has only revealed in a very dramatic and tragic sense that we are all inextricably connected. But number two, this is not a crisis of resources, but it is a crisis of priorities. What do I mean by that? We've seen over the course of 3 months, trillions upon trillions of dollars mobilized and moved by Congress, and we've seen interest rates lowered by our Federal Reserve in ways that are historic. And so we see that the problem is not having the money to support our people, but it's who is supported. It's who's getting the dollars. It's who's getting money from the CARES Act. And too often, it's not the people that look like you and me. It's not the folks that represent a minority business community. And so we need to realize that our country for too long has not been prioritizing the most vulnerable among us, while it has always had the resources. So we must push to have the resources and prioritize the people. But number three, it also shows us that people, everyday people, have the power to flatten the curve. That when our leaders in our governments, in our pastors are making irrational decisions of opening up businesses in states, in churches, knowing that we don't have a vaccine, that we don't have enough testing, that we don't have sufficient contact tracing, but you continue to move people into dangerous spaces, risking 6 feet apart and later putting them 6 feet under as a consequence of that, in order to protect a bottom line. When the leaders don't do that, the people have to do what's right and express moral leadership and stay home. You have to stay in your house. You have to stay there, not just for yourself, but for the people that are around you that are more vulnerable to the virus because they have comorbidities, like other Black folks that have blood pressure issues, health issues, heart disease, the things that we deal with as a consequence of medical apartheid in this country, of the distrust, righteous distrust of the medical community. And so we see that everyday people can flatten the curve and save one another when leaders in high places don't care about the folks.
So we would be correct in saying that we are responsible for our own lives when the leaders are misleading us. So we are responsible for our health and future, perhaps.
We must take control of our health. We must take control of the knowledge that's being distributed in our communities, because there's a lot of misinformation and miseducation. So we must be in control.
Yeah. Speaking of being in control, you seem so passionate about everything that you do. And in that box, there's filmmaking. You're an associate producer. When did you fall in love with that craft?
Well, I have to be honest, I think that it was when I witnessed my first Spike Lee film, which was School Days. School Days took place on the campus of Morehouse College. It was Spike Lee's representation of Black college life. It was so rich, and it delved into so much nuance of what it means to be a Black person navigating this space, but also navigating the United States of America. And just to see the dramatic work, not only in School Days, but in Spike's Malcolm X and Do the Right Thing. And She's Gotta Have It. You can tell I love Spike Lee. So I really fell in love with the craft of filmmaking, of reading film, because of my interaction with Spike's work and the fact that he's a Morehouse brother. And that's only continued with the work that we've done with the Ase Film Project that you see here. I'm just going to do a quick little plug with Ase Research Film Project. So I have to say that it goes back, to my Morehouse brother Spike Lee.
You've done a lot in your career, and I'm sure that there's still more that you're planning to do. So what's next for Jerome?
So as you mentioned, I'm a founding member of the Ase Research Film Project and associate producer of the film Ubuntu Rising. I'm also the director of the William Monroe Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice at Harvard University. I serve as the Minister of Social Justice and Community Engagement at the historic Myrtle Baptist Church in West Newton, Massachusetts, and the co-convener of the COVID-19 Bioethics Commission of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, Incorporated. I do a lot of things right now, and I'm sure that, I'm only 26 years old, so I'm sure that I'm gonna have a few more roles before I get out of here. But no matter what the platform is or what the seat is that I occupy as minister, higher education administrator, ambassador, the method and platform may change, but the mission will be the same. And the mission is to be a moral leader, to be someone who does the greatest good for the greatest amount of people with a global perspective. That's what I'm committed to doing from this moment until the day that I ascend to that great cloud of witnesses.
Thank you so much for waking up for Cape Town TV, because we know that there's a time difference. It's morning your side, it's afternoon our side. So thank you for making time for us.
Thank you a great deal for having me. It's
Lastly,
been a
before I
pleasure.
let you go, how do we follow you on social media?
You can follow me on Twitter or on Instagram if you just type in @Devon J. Crawford, or you can look me up on Facebook at Devon Jerome Crawford. And also follow us at the Trotter Collaborative at Harvard University by typing in trotter.hks.harvard.edu.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much to everybody who chose EKSE today. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, between 4 and 5 p.m. And if you missed this episode, you can catch it on YouTube. It's EKSE on Cape Town TV. Otherwise, wake up with us between 7 and 8 in the morning. This very episode and this very interview will be there. So goodbye, so long. Up next is Open Studio. We hope to see you next time. Keep it locked right here on Channel 263. This is the People's Channel. My name is Lamali Moon, and I'm saying God bless and goodbye.
CTV family, catch us live on your TV screens. CPT where we be, 4 p.m. till 5.